or via New Orleans. It's like clouds and trees and panels, and I'm kind of trying to duck to like see it again myself, because I am actually in a room with some abandoned bookshelves mostly at my parents' house while my toddler is elsewhere.
Okay. Well, that's a very rich description. It really gives us a picture. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. Thank you so much for coming. This is truly exciting. Hi, Delia. Hi, Steve. Still seeing friendly faces and exciting names that I'm not familiar with come flowing into the room. This is called Body Language, Poets Wheel, Sing, Fly. And I'm Sarah Rosenthal, and my co-panelists are Petra Kuppers, Nina Vega-Westhoff, and Julia Zell Patton. Thanks to Petra for hosting this event as part of her textual experimentation class in the Women's and Gender Studies Department at the University of Michigan. And thanks to all of you again for joining us. So I had the idea for this panel because over time I've been getting more and more focused on embodiment as both content and practice. Since I expect this trend to continue, I'm thrilled to gather with Petra, Nina, and Julie, whose explorations at the junctures of writing, vocalization, site-specific performance, visual art, and aerial art expand our sense of what's possible both within and across disciplines, when we remember that we don't have bodies, a construction suggesting ownership and alienation, but rather we are embodied, intelligent, creative presences in relation. It's like the difference between capitalism and love. For the panelists, this offers a chance to reflect on our trajectories thus far and offer insights gained through our respective practices. We also hope it will be a helpful lens for viewing your own artistic practices, for coming a step or two closer to the way you want your art to move through the world. So we're pasting our bios into the chat, and we'll each give a talk, and we'll end with a brief Q&A. And should you wish to revisit the talks after this event, we're also going to be pasting a link into the chat for a Google file where we've posted some of the materials we're using in our talks. And please note that during our talks, if those of us who are sharing images will briefly describe any images or text that we project. So without further ado, I am going to turn it over to Petra.
Lovely. Thank you so much. Thank you, Sarah, for bringing us together here. I appreciate to be in this community. And I'm so glad to see so many wonderful people here in our guest list, as well as the textual experimentation students. So I am a white woman. I come to you from Anishinaabe territory in colonially known as Ypsilanti, Michigan. I have a bald head, yellow glasses, pink lipstick, and a very tactile, textured velvet top in front of a pink background. And I'm drawing attention already to my embodiment by speaking to you about tactility, about touch in relation to my body and what drapes my body. So I am the part of our panel that wheels in the world. I am using a scooter or wheelchair to get out. I'm using a cane, or sometimes I just walk very haltingly without a cane, with a lot of slowness and attention to the surfaces that I'm on. So I'm going to share with you a little bit of how this way of being in the world, of wheeling, walking tentatively, stumblingly in the world, how that impacts who I am as a writer. And I hope to end on a little meditation with you. All right. So next time you're not in front of the screen, next time you're out there, you're going out there into the world, I'd love you to observe how you navigate the world and which rhythms shape your journey. Are there smooth stones out of your backyard? Or are there a few steps down a stoop? Or is there a long whoosh of a ride in an elevator? Or maybe there are cracked paving stones. How does your mode of embodiment, the way you move through the world, shape your sensorium? So I currently use a scooter, a hand twist providing speed as I glide for long stretches till I come to a stop at a non-existing curb cut. Or I need to carefully navigate a neighborhood tree root that has cracked its concrete confinement. When I'm at home or on short journeys, I tap along with a cane, distribute weight, shift to accommodate chronic pain patterns, sway when standing for more than a heartbeat. Slow, halted, or really fast with my scooter. My attention shifts with my environment, the smooth or broken edges of the world, and with awareness of my inner state, my pain threshold, and the way I hold myself to ward off future pain. Inner sensation and outer affordances rise to the level of consciousness. These two ways of perceiving and the intricate dance between them fuel my creative practice. I am a poet because I am in pain. My writing brings me into relation with this pain, with joy, with life in the interstices between words and sensations. As I shift orientation and become aware of my wider ecologies, I perceive even more in an eco-soma way of being. Suddenly, in these pain moments, I feel the histories and presences of the land I'm traversing, in the gap between eco and soma, between environment and my bodied self. There is my somatic experience, my relative ease or discomfort, in contact not only with the actual environment I'm in, but also with what that environment signifies. The relative investment or disinvestment in a neighborhood, and the racial and class configurations that have led to this particular arrangement of green space, brownfield, concrete, or toxic site. My crippy, close attention gait and my smooth gliding scooter passage offer me different kinds of pauses and speeds to appreciate how my white, cisgendered, queer, disabled body, mind, spirit fits into this geographical amalgamation of power relations. I write about dragonfly nymph husks on a lake deck, or about half-torn leaflets for dance competitions in a movement studio, about rocks in my hand and bricks in windows. And I find in these traces again and again that this world is not naturally the way it is. This world has been shaped by some body, mind, spirits for particular body, mind, spirits and not for others. And we live in these ruins. The apocalypse has already been happening for centuries for many. And we can all learn to live better with one another and in our world. Access is never just about ramps, as grateful as I am for them. Access is about activities that widen the circle of being aware of who is not in the room, on the stoop, or in the street with us. To think, feel in this eco-soma way is unsettling. Where I grew up in Germany, in a small village on the Niederrhein, every creek and rivulet was alive, had invisible creatures living in it, giving care and worthy of care. And my embodiment and enmindment shaped themselves around the secure knowledge of an animate and magical world, and my developing ethical understanding of what it meant to come from a perpetrator nation and the debt that imposes on oneself. I grew up aware of what it meant to be German after the Nazis, with a soiled cultural connection to the land. I found out that the connections between environmental love and white supremacy run deep, that racism and ableism are deeply baked into the social contracts contemporary nations have wrought. I learned that I had to unsettle myself from my secure location as a disabled, but hopefully still valued citizen. And now, living in the colonial geography of the US, I have to unsettle myself on indigenous land, feel, research, sense, disconnect, align my pathways across occupied territory with my personal pain and the witnessing of colonial and racist pain that I experience in spatial testimony all around me. Contemporary perspectives on living disabled mean becoming aware of the histories of human classification and ongoing violence when moving through one's space. And that awareness can mean growing into new relational ecologies. And I use again these terms, eco and soma. These two layered concepts grow pearl skins as they rub against one another, right? So imagine a pearl. Here's the sand corn in the oyster. It's the constant irritation that creates the pearl. So this eco-soma rubbing is what I'm interested in when I'm thinking about ecosoma methods, where I feel my own self truly unsettled, teetering, when the knowledge of oppressions that are not part of my personal lineage become irritant enough to affect my sense of self. As an artist and a poet, these are the moments I look for. Resonance beyond the self, feeling more than self, energies chafing. And out of this instability emerge the forces of creation and hopefully the kernels of community. And I will invite you now to think about your own ecologies, your own sites of unsettlement. Let us marvel at the complex webs our layered sensation and thoughts can make. And then let's write for all our liberation. So in order to do that, I invite you now on a little meditative journey. So I started by thinking about the space outside our front door as we go out into space. But right now, I like to invite you to just feel where you're sitting and what you're sitting on. So let's take a breath and feel what supports you. What is holding you up right now as you're sitting or lying down or standing, or one of you was on BART in the on transport, public transport, the plastic seats holding you nicely and secure as the carriage races along. And for just a second, I'd like you to become aware of the history of the material that you are sitting on right now. What is it? Are you sitting on plastic, wood, wool, metal? And as you feel that material, sense into the cultural, sociological histories of that material. Who has worked historically or currently on creating this material? What are the stories, the supply chains, the material histories that are baked into this object that now supports you? If you're sitting on a plastic chair, think about the deep pressure that ancient old marine organisms were under as they transformed into oil, as the oil became extracted. What lands are used up and put aside as toxic in that travel from the oil side to the factory that makes the seat you're now sitting on. And how can you use those moments of connect, disconnect, the destabilizations of our securely sitting, spine supported, sits bones resting place as you transform that into instability? What opens up? What pain? What joy? How can you hold them both together? And I'll have 1 more minute left. And I invite you in this minute now to see if a phrase flows up to you that you want to put into the chat. So you open your eyes and maybe there's a word or a phrase that you would like to give into the chat as a little communal poem of our comfort, discomfort. This is a very abbreviated version of a much longer workshop I often lead. I'm just going to give it a second for the chat to populate, and then I'll read it out, Sarah, and then I'll hand it on. Cotton barges journey into ourselves, out to the world, connecting through pain and joy. Awareness, foam, squish, sun spokes, new awareness, foam memory. Deep pressure as care, as distraction, raised bone imbalance, tiled stone elevated to the 3rd floor here. Growth, I've been using this chair since I was 10. Rest, under the skeletal compression, what kind of oil will I become? Pink, stay conscious. Beautiful. Thank you for engaging in this wheeled dance. I'm going to put a last link in here to this new book, Ecosoma, that actually I just received this week. This is a new baby. It just came out into the world, and I put the links in there. And this is a book that's written out of the considerations that I just shared with you. And now I'm handing it on to the next person. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Petra. That was so stimulating thought-wise and also emotionally and somatically grounding. What a gift. So glad you went first. It's such a wonderful gift. Okay, let's see. I'm gonna spotlight moi. And I'm gonna give my talk next. Can you see that okay?
Yes.
Okay. So again, I'm Sarah Rosenthal, and I am a white person with short silver hair, glasses, dark reddish lipstick, and a plaid sweater. And I'm sitting in my home office where I can be found most hours of the days and weeks when I'm not out in the beautiful day moving my body. So my talk is called Composing by Hand. Composing by Hand, Embodiment as Artistic Practice. And just a note that my slides are mostly drawings of my left hand. I'm showing them not because I consider myself a visual artist, but as a demonstration of somatic engagement, foregrounding risk and vulnerability. They're like the body coming in and giving the talk in its own way. There are also slides that feature writing, and I'll be reading those aloud. Embodiment as both practice and subject matter is central to my art. In terms of practice, I compose poetry by hand. Poetry for me is about condensation and layers of meaning. It comes from a place of stillness that I can only achieve by being grounded. And the screen works well for some poets, but for me, the speed of tapping out words on that spiffy keyboard leads to glibness. Whereas the slower pace of handwriting and the dance of my hand making curves and lines, the visible traces of process, arrows, carrots, crossouts, slashes, circles, help me stay somatically attuned. And with that comes greater discernment, originality, and integration of ideas and feelings. But somatic attunement is more than a nice idea. I'm pretty useless without a lot of attention to my somatic well-being. My default from a traumatic childhood was to exist outside my body, hating it. Not a fun way to navigate the day or interact with the world, much less create a piece of art. As I've gained greater knowledge of my process, embodiment becomes more and more central to my art making. While poetry remains my primary form, I've experimented beyond the page, entering the song, the dance studio, the sketch pad. I value these other disciplines in part because I have lower expectations for myself when I experiment in them, and because they encourage active physical play, helping counteract my anxiously productive side, so well trained by our alleged meritocracy. And the acute somatic presence required to chant, sketch, tumble, spin, sway, filters into my poetry as a growing capacity to take risks. In my experience, embodied art making is also good for relationships. It allows me to open toward others' ideas without losing myself. Perhaps my focus on embodiment over time is partly responsible for the fact that I'm finding myself in more art-making relationships while still treasuring my solo practice. My interest in embodiment manifests not just as practice, but also as subject matter. In my work, I strive to foreground both the pleasures and perils of embodiment. In Manhattan, a book combining fiction, poetry, and art criticism, a self-conscious young woman named Sarah Rosenthal learns to inhabit her own skin, coming a few steps closer to accepting her sexuality, personality, and creativity. A poetry chapbook, The Animal, a collaboration with visual artist Amy Feng-Yi Lee, foregrounds our animality and interspecies relationships. My poetry collection, Lizard, explores the endangerment and othering that females and many species, including lizards, must navigate. A forthcoming poetry collection, Estelle meaning star, and a chapbook called We Could Hang a Radical Panel of Light, both feature cut-ups of dream language I recorded during cancer treatment. The labor of cutting and pasting bits of language was important to me. I wanted this body, these hands, still here after a serious illness, to make something. I wanted to strive and fail to do it perfectly, and for the traces of that process to show on every page. I've also worked on 2 collaborative books with poet Valerie Whitty, exploring dance, both dance as what we all do throughout the day and with each other, and dance as an art. One of those books, titled The Grass is Greener When the Sun is Yellow, mixes poems and letters. The other is a manuscript collection of essays. I use an excerpt from one of those essays as the voiceover in my film We Agree on the Sun, a collaboration with a choreographer and a filmmaker editor team. The essay and film both address houselessness as a form of physical precarity that is inflicted, as well as the dance of avoidance that the housed do in relation to the unhoused on the street and in policy. One body is safe and one is not. My work seeks to complicate the issue of embodiment by investigating ways that the skin bag of the body masks more communal dimensions of our being. I is cyborg, a term Donna Haraway's work has popularized. I is an animal among animals, one made up of gazillions of organisms. Matter flows into and out of us. Our glasses are extension of our eyes. Surgeons implant metal and porcelain into our teeth, breasts, and bones, and our cyborgness will only increase with age. I is also a we in another sense. Nathaniel Mackey writes, "He who wrote was less a he than a committee." I comprises innumerable other poets, non-poets, ghosts, dream figures, ancestors, We can't ever know all the influences that form an identity. An I is part of a we, where we means, as Dana Teen Lomax has said, looking at our privilege and seeing into places we don't have to look, and that's expansive. We is not a given. We is a practice. Part of that practice is making art with and alongside other artists, some of whom fight to get through the day, let alone create. To talk about embodiment without naming ableism is dishonest. Kay Ulande Barrett puts the call powerfully when they write, "A sheer and formidable dedication to undoing ableism is an integral part of every area that poetry and writing inhabits. If we don't invest in collective responsibility for this work, we are denying ourselves collective pleasure." And we all want some more collective pleasure. I would add to the poetry and writing that Barrett names all the other artistic media that we poets may choose to cross into. One aspect of embodiment that permeates my thinking is the impact on our well-being of technology and virtual reality. This is, of course, an extremely complicated subject. We wouldn't be gathered here without tech. It enables us to work, play, learn, connect. And for many of us, it's not just a cool bonus, but a necessity for survival. As just one example, during the pandemic, unequal access to devices and connectivity has meant all the more hardship for those already bearing an unequal share of the burden. Equal access to state-of-the-art tech is essential. At the same time, I know firsthand the constant struggle to not be vaporized by screens, and I know I'm not alone. I believe that artificial intelligence, devices, and algorithms are stealing our humanity. We're forgetting how to read, touch, make eye contact. Our eyes hurt, our necks and wrists and hips hurt. Most of our jobs involve screens and apps, and then for relaxation, we binge watch. Is it relaxing? Virus, fish, flame, bully, scroll. Does it replenish? Advertisers are hard at work figuring out how to penetrate our dreams to sell us stuff. That's another way of spelling the end, no? Philosopher Achille Mbembe writes, "Formatting as many minds as possible, shaping people's desires, recrafting their symbolic world, blurring the distinction between reality and fiction, and eventually colonizing their unconscious have become key operations in the dissemination of microfascism in the interstices of the real. The work is to protect our imaginal capacity, resist the addiction to screens and consumption, and retain the integrity of our minds, hearts, and frames." In the face of such questions and issues, my soft body and knowing it and loving it is something I can offer. It allows me to make art and is a big part of what my art stands for. I is not this body, and I chooses to care for this body, for these our many bodies. So I pursue embodiment as both practice and subject matter with equal parts urgency and joy. So thank you. And I am going to turn it over to Nina.
Hi. Wow. Okay. This Zoom land is so wild. I am sitting on a chair in a room that's not the most comfortable room for me, but I'm here. It's a little cold, so I have a blanket on, a yellow blanket. You can't, it's under the screen camera, and now a blue hoodie. And I have this background of a collage, like I said, by Annie Bayardini, Italian poet and artist and translator. I am coming to you from Columbia, Missouri, so-called Columbia, Missouri, near Bear Creek specifically in the Missouri River watershed, although that's about a half-hour drive to see the Big Muddy. I'm living in Osage land, Missouri, Otoy, Iowa, and more people's lands who were dispossessed, are dispossessed of their lands. I'm living on land in which people were enslaved and separated from their families. I'm living on land that is also being partly restored to prairie. I'm living in my parents' house currently with my partner and child during this pandemic. So I am pandemic parenthood performance poetics tonight, coming at you here. And maybe on the move again soon. I guess I invite you to inhabit this space as needed and as desired. I want to say as desired. So one practice for me during this last 2 years has been often to have my camera off, to give myself a little more permission for that desire, to do the things that I wouldn't be able to do if I were in person, or at least I wouldn't feel as comfortable doing. I admire the people who can do so, irregardless of space. But moving as needed, right? Drinking water as needed, as desired. I had the practice often of dancing to text or to poetry readings. One of the first readings in the pandemic that I got to dance to or with was Petra's reading with my toddler, and we had a blast, like rolling on the floor and listening, you know, and listen. So there, I guess I'm inviting multiple ways of listening, right? I think not necessarily the staged listening. And okay, I have a slideshow, just kind of as a touchstone for myself. And I will like describe things and kind of use them or not use them. And I'm going to find it now over here. I guess I'm going to do screen share. Maybe I'll find it first. Body language here. Okay, then I go back to Zoom. And then I'm going to say, am I screen sharing now?
Not
No.
yet.
Oh, here we go.
Not yet.
I saw a pause recording. Here we go. Sorry. I also want to say that part of my reality is coming. I'm getting over a cold. I'm coughing every night with insomnia. Had it for 3 weeks, and supposedly it's not COVID. I had COVID in November, along with my toddler. I get everything my toddler gets. You know, not really a toddler, 3, but under vaccine age. Okay, so anyway, that's part of my reality is I'm a little disembodied right now. Can you see my screen now?
Yes, we can. Yeah.
Okay, because now I'm all like, whoa, where did everybody go? All right.
You probably want to press slideshow.
Thank you. Yes. Okay. So body language with wheels, sing, fly, Christina Vega-Westhoff, Nina's my nickname. And then I just wrote some little captions for myself. Poetry, aerial translation, circus, dance, performance, place. As kind of, you know, the juggling of life. Choreo poems, dance within writing, ekphrasis, and review poems as sort of modes of writing or of interacting between performance and poetry. And then I have on this next slide a picture from the cover of Swallowtide Cement, which was is my book of poetry out through Nightboat in 2018. And it's a picture of tree roots Jennifer Spector might remember this tree. She's in the audience, not to call you out, but I just did. But this is a tree that we meditated under, and it's also a tree that I practiced trapeze dancing while we were at a residency focused on soil in Veraguas, Panama, where my mom is not from Veraguas, but she's from Panama. She's Panamanian USian, and my dad is from Iowa, corn farmland settler area. And okay, and then the other picture that's overlaid on top of it is the view of Casco Viejo from Cerro Ancon. And okay, so those two things are layered. This idea of where are we, of focusing on soil and creating with soil, of looking at an old town, an old port, of the development there, the development around it. Tying into the image is a ring of a newly constructed highway at the time, one of the Cita Costera projects. So we were thinking about soil in a time of heightened development and creating and working together as compost. And that's where the book started, but it continued during the dry season, which of course is a time of construction boom. And the picture on the right is me in a tree doing trapeze elsewhere. If you're an aerialist, I don't recommend rigging from trees. I'll say that as a teacher, cover myself there, but I did at the time. And there's a link there to a Vimeo video, Compost Composed. It's a video dance poem. And that's also kind of, I don't know, the impetus for the book, in that that's what I was really interested in creating a dance, exploring ways to heal macro, micro, and beyond. So as someone who goes to Panama, you know, not that frequently, but every once in a while, some of the changes, you know, ecologically are very like stark for me as a returning person. So that's part of it. Okay, so one ingredient, aerial dance, trapeze. Solitide cement as compostual incantation. Daybook, decreation, ritual, dry season construction, accelerated theft, dispossession, ecological development, and resilience. The role of ritual, traces of aerial writing, dimensionality, muscular, choreo, recalibration. And I wanted to read just one poem from the book that is something that later I thought maybe I would chop up the entire book and rewrite it as a splicing, as a tectonic force of plates merging, composta compuesto from swallowtide cement. A veces estoy más en un lugar que others. It makes a difference where hay diferencia. Muchos de los antiguos of communities, both as in nociones de vivir y lugar, un líder o guru to guide, authoritatively instruct. Si el diseño está supuesto a ser participatory in an individual doubled su participación real, ¿a cuál degree of witnessing? How many bromas en la panga o acompañamientos if we mold things with our hands? ¿Cómo podrían rápidas instalaciones o the kid-sized clay oven or the trapeze pasado de repente o el bañarse entre una among a 70 million-year-old entity? Debajo del árbol en el cual estoy exploring, practicing, creating a ritual of cierta manera de arraigamiento, aunque en el aire, a mixture with green and brown materials. Un raíz especialmente elegante stretches below my hand cuando estoy boca abajo. My ankles, I can nearly touch it, and a veces logro hacerlo, cambiando whatever movement or creating it. Girar un poco más. The time we here cannot be rapidly diseccionado, aunque lo intentamos it last night, as in the microscope que funciona, pero con un pedazo, piece, slightly or fully broken. Y aun cuando escribo esto, alguien approaching or distancing, footsteps sobre hojas, ramas, and other descomponiéndose, to look at decomposting, composición, como lo más, creación without qualifiers. Okay, and then just, I guess, one thing I wanted to say with writing poems in relation to dance was that, I guess, early on when I was interested, and I was like, oh, let me read all the poems I can with people who write about dance, and mostly it was like this, like Frank Bedard, like, oh, the great ballerina, and beautiful poem, I love it, but also it's like so descriptive, right? And then like later I found Josie Fu and Leah Stein's book together, which was like dance writing from both like performer, choreographer, like score writing and embodied writing, like both there. I don't know, it's not different, but it is. And I guess when I was learning aerial while studying poetry in Tucson, because the studio happened to be close to my house or my apartment, and it was affordable. And I had seen my first performance of aerial in Panama, in Casco Viejo with my grandma, during a free performance, a company from France, scaling onto a statue and descending. And it was so amazing to see space changed and be with other people.
Nina, I'm going to jump in and just let you know you should wrap in the next minute. I mean, please wrap in the next minute because
Okay.
Julie is in the house and will want to.
Totally. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Sorry to
interrupt. Yeah, so I'll just say that writing for me with dance started by trying to remember things, like for little student showcases, right? Like, okay, I want to remember my choreography, so I'm gonna like take that vocabulary and write about it and embody it in this other way, and then it's something else and it has different meaning for me. So anyway, but that practice I kind of haven't kept up. Then I have just a slide from There's Nothing So Precious, showing a piece that was a collaborative piece about water in Buffalo, New York, in the land of Seneca and Haudenosaunee, with a little script from our score. At the bottom, loud breath getting faster as jeans are extracted from river and put into backpacks, airless or in the air. A collective long from the floor. A picture of me on a trapeze throwing plastic and tampons into the river, our imaginary river, and people, poets and scientists and acupuncturists, floor and air. And then like a little image from Between Worlds showing the process of creating a dance piece, which was part of a huge not a huge, but a big collaborative thing in a studio that began with chalking on the floor and then sand on the floor, collective writing from everybody, what history was erased for you, an image of the construction boom in Buffalo, dancing over top, an image of me on the trapeze. The score for that involved like, shifting the sand.
Thank you so much, Nina.
There's an image of
Nina,
another collaboration. Thank you.
We're gonna need, I'm so sorry, there's so much juicy stuff here. To be continued, to be continued. And just to keep in mind, let me see if I can unpin you. Just to keep in mind that that some of these materials are in the, thank you so much, Nina, that was really inspiring. And these materials are in the Google Drive. Nina, perhaps you'd like to share that again in the chat, just so people can revisit your materials at a slower pace and see more good stuff. So our next speaker is Julia Zell Patton. And I'm going to find you here.
Here I am.
Here you are. Let me see. Where? Okay, there you are. Great, Julie. So take it away, Julie.
Cool. Well, Uh, Greetings, everyone. Blessings. You will hear noises. You will walk in darkness with me. You will be present when I turn on a light. I heard the name, or I saw the name Brenda Ijima crop up. And so I am going to show and tell something related to her as an improvisation. Now, how do you flip it backwards? So, and this isn't what I plan to do because I don't plan to do, I just do as a necessary function. So Brenda sent me this package, a talisman at the beginning of the play, and birds arriving. I've talked about this piece before, and I was just thinking today that she has yet to see it. But in that week, the same week that I received her package, Leanne Brown sent me a series of birds, and there were birds, and Melanie Dyer Viola sent me hers, and Janice Lowe sent me her album, and it's actually of a piece that I did, an assemblage that she borrowed, and there's a bird in there, and here's Leanne's letter, and then once I told Leanne, then she got down with the birds and sent them again, and that's my late Aunt Ollie's bird pen. She was in burlesque, I understand. And there's the dove of peace, and it's related in similar symbology to the thunderbird and the sand painting. And so this is what all these materials have gathered in this one room. As it's good somatics to hear my leg bumping up against a piece of furniture as I get ready to move through the dark again, and you will move with me, moving along. When the play commenced, I carved out finally a space in this building for myself. It's actually a closet, and it couldn't be cozier. And this is where I held myself tight during that early period. It's just a walk-in closet, not too big, but perfect for me. As a child who grew up in a tiny house with 8 bodies and not a room of my own, I once took over my parents' closet. This is the world and all its subjects being mastered. I saw Dave Chappelle has been in the news a lot lately in reference to the town of Yellow Springs, which is where Antioch College is. And so I hear people speak using a certain language. I don't have that language at my fingertips because I chose to go to Antioch so that I would not come out of that machine or any machine too far away from myself and my ancestral learnings, and which happened right here in this neighborhood. If I turn on a light, move into the light, you will see Shootout in Cleveland, one of the few times in Black history that men armed themselves and had a duel with the cops. This is a sofa that was, most of the stuff in this building, I should call this building a hiding place because I'm always moving things around, trying to find a place for things that aren't mine. That's the amount of junk and stuff, the amount of no thing that is something that is trash. But this, I just couldn't bring myself to put this couch in any landfill. And so the cats claimed it as we were moving it out, and they kind of live up here in this space. And so I began stripping it down to see what essence the the couch had, and it's become a nice hiding place for instruments, the birds, the dinosaurs, and they clap back at us. And right now, I'm rising up, I'm stooping down. This is beautiful, beautiful fabric, but it's really just glassine. I've lived my life trying to spare my fingers from things that I don't like to touch, which means plastic. And so to protect things from the UV light, like this painting of my mom when she went through a flower period, I have a whole closet of just paper. But I think I spend most of my time thinking that to walk with God, as I saw on a book that I ran into in the pantry, I don't want to turn on such a garish light. I will hold on for a brief moment and talk about, since I didn't see the book, walking with God as kind of a gleaning practice, walking with God, great spirit, love, whatever you want to call it, of just caring for and protecting the castaways that are so close at hand on this parkway, which has now been discovered and has police. We're out there a while ago settling an argument. So I save these materials or pick them out of the trash as I'm cleaning up in this great fortress because, for many reasons, as I said, the touch, the savings of things, a non-lowering, flowering plants of daily bending over and stooping. It's all bodies. It's not just my bodies, it's the bodies that I use in this practice of creating a poet's house that doesn't do presentation as much as give people the space to sit with themselves, because at my ripe young age, if there's anything I've noticed about being a child of the 50s and having the word progress beat into my head, is the need to go back and back and back. As Sarah was speaking, get back in our bodies before we, so unless we do that, how do we know what we're doing? If you live a long span of time under this kind of regime or empire, then you will realize that the way forward is back. It's like an old cheerleaders dance. Push them back, way back, way back, push them back, way back. But the other thing I'd like to say is that a lot of the objects are memory objects and prayer objects that as long as they're around, they have resonance and remind me of hovering over the earth because I see the earth in this form. Hovering over it reminds me to attach my heart to this fixture.
Julie, I'm going to just jump in and ask you to find a very beautiful, organic ending place for this amazing video poem.
Well, all in all, one piece of trash, so-called trash that was always around in this building, which was born 100 years ago, was this piece. And then I laughed because I said, that's been the life of the people engaged We, the willing, led by the unknowing, are doing the impossible for the ungrateful. We have done so much with so little for so long. We are now qualified to do anything with nothing. And this is all the nothing that would normally be gotten away on without a thought. No thing, nothing, making something of the nothing. Thank you.
Oh my gosh, thank you. That was so exciting and just so inspiring. I know we're all just thrilled to be pulled so deeply into this spontaneous eruption of words and to be privileged with this tour of this phenomenal space that is somatic living and art making all of one piece. I'm looking at the time and it's crazy. We have 1.5 minutes left. This has been so phenomenal. I am so grateful to our amazing speakers today and our wonderful audience. Thank you so much for the very, very active chat, which I will save for the speakers to read when we have time. And in another life, we're going to have time for a question and answer because there's a lot of people here who have a lot to say and have a lot of knowledge of somatic awareness. So, any last thoughts from any of our fellow panelists before we sign off? Petra, Nina, Julie.
I'm just in love with this collage that happened.
Beautiful. Yes.
So thank you all so much.
And I say many thanks too for this. It was gorgeous how we came together. I so appreciate this beautiful community. Thank you so much. And thank you also for the gorgeous web of all the people who were here and who were name tagged and brought in and woven into each and all of these presentations. So that's the gifting, the talismans, the being together. Thank you so much.
All right. Well, we're going to sign off and yeah, let's continue the conversation some kind of way, people. We've got a